Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going straight into a really dark story. Richard Ramirez, who most people know as the Night Stalker.
That's right. We're working from excerpts from The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez's Reign of Terror. It's quite a detailed account.
Yeah, and our mission here isn't just to list facts, we want to really understand the key events, the impact, what this specific account tells us about that whole period.
Exactly. It's a pretty raw look at a time of intense fear in Los Angeles. So we'll try to pull out the core narrative from the source, see how it all unfolded according to this book.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Richard Ramirez, born February 29th, 1960, Leap Day baby in El Paso, Texas.
And right from the start, the source paints a picture of a difficult childhood. Violence in the home?
It mentions physical abuse from his father, specifically.
Yeah, the text is quite direct about that. But then there's this other figure, his cousin, a Vietnam vet.
Ah, right. I remember reading that part. The source says something pretty chilling, doesn't it?
It does. It says the cousin showed Ramirez how to kill.
Yeah.
Which is, it makes you really think about influences, doesn't it? Especially that kind of intense, violent exposure so early on.
And it gets even darker. There's a specific event mentioned when Ramirez was only 12.
Yeah, witnessing his cousin murder his wife, actually shoot her in the face.
Just devastating. You have to imagine the trauma of seeing something like that, especially at that age. The source definitely presents it as like a really pivotal moment.
Oh, absolutely. The potential psychological fallout from witnessing that kind of extreme violence during development. It's hard to even grasp.
So the source then follows him moving to California.
Right. And describes this descent into, drugs, getting involved with Satanism, petty crimes. It suggests this kind of troubling path.
Each step seems worse than the last, leading towards the violence to come.
It's disturbing how all those elements might have sort of come together, how one thing led to another.
And that path really culminated in that horrific spree starting, according to the book, in June 1984.
Yeah, that seems to be the point where it shifts, where the petty crime just explodes into something truly monstrous.
The first victim the book mentions is Jenny Vinkow, 79 years old.
Found nearly decapitated.
Yes.
It immediately sets the tone for the brutality involved. This wasn't just about theft, it was visceral, personal almost.
And sadly, just the first of many, the book names others. The Zazaras, Sakina Abuwath, Mayloom, Bill Carnes.
And then it just says dozens more.
Yeah.
Chilling. It really underscores the scale of the terror that must have been built.
What stands out, too, is the randomness the source describes.
Exactly. It emphasizes there wasn't a clear pattern. Men, women, children. The youngest victim mentioned was 9, the oldest 83. Elderly people, young people.
And nobody who felt safe.
Pretty much. That unpredictability probably amplified the fear more than anything. You couldn't think, oh, this won't happen to me because I'm X or Y.
And then there were the other elements. The Satanism stuff.
Right. The pentagrams reportedly left at scenes. The demands for victims to swear allegiance to Satan.
It adds this whole other layer of psychological terror, doesn't it? Beyond just the physical violence.
Absolutely. It's why the book uses that phrase, spiritual terrorism. It wasn't just crime. It felt like an attack on, fundamental beliefs, on order itself.
And Ramirez himself, the source, quotes him in court saying, "Lucifer is king."
Yeah. It really cements that declared belief system, or at least the image he projected. Not fearing God, believing he was the darkness.
So, taking a step back, what was this actually like for the city, for Los Angeles in, say, 1985?
Well, the source describes a city essentially paralyzed. It mentions gun sales shooting up, people barricading themselves in their homes.
Wow, so it really changed daily life.
Fundamentally, for so many people, that basic sense of security most of us take for granted, it just evaporated.
And this is when the press dubbed him the Night Stalker, right?
Yeah, and that name itself, as the book suggests, probably solidified that terrifying image even more. Became this, boogeyman figure.
So what were the police doing?
Law enforcement responded, of course. The source mentioned the creation of a special LAPD task force.
But they were struggling initially.
Very much so. The book highlights the limited evidence they had to work with at first. Partial fingerprints, eyewitness accounts that were maybe fragmented, a boot tread.
Bits and pieces.
Right. Clues, but nothing that immediately pointed to one person. The source mentions those vintage news reports, another grisly murder believed to be linked.
Yeah.
It just highlights how relentless it felt at the time.
But the nightmare did end. He was caught. August 31st, 1985.
Yes. And the circumstances described in the book are pretty incredible, actually.
How did that happen again?
It really came down to the community. He apparently saw his own face on the front page of a newspaper in a convenience store.
And people recognized him.
Yeah. And the source describes citizens in East L.A. actually chasing him down, hitting him with metal bars, holding him until the police got there.
Wow. Ordinary people.
The powerful moment in the narrative really shows the public's determination, maybe even desperation, to stop the terror.
The book puts it really strongly. The devil met the people, and the people won.
It's a striking line, isn't it? Captures that sense of, I guess, collective victory over fear.
So after the capture comes the trial.
Right. The narrative moves into the legal proceedings. Conviction in 1989.
And the charges were extensive. 13 counts of murder.
Plus 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, 14 burglaries. The list just goes on. It really quantifies the sheer scale of the crimes.
And his behavior in court. The source mentions that, too.
Yeah, it describes him grinning, flashing a pentagram drawn in his hand.
And that infamous line, "See you in Disneyland."
Chillingly flippant. It just shows, according to this account, a complete lack of remorse. A real disconnect from the horror he'd inflicted.
He received the death penalty, death by gas chamber.
He did? But as the book points out, the state of California never actually executed him.
Right, he died of cancer in 2013, at 53.
Yeah, which adds this other layer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For some, maybe it felt like justice wasn't fully served, or at least not in the way the court intended. It raises questions about finality.
And even though he's gone, Ramirez, he still kind of lingers in the public consciousness.
Definitely. The book touches on that. Nightmares people still have, documentaries, pop culture references, even that disturbing twisted fandom phenomenon.
The source mentions the Netflix documentary from 2021 as a recent example.
Right. It makes you wonder why certain figures like him continue to hold this dark fascination, doesn't it? Is it just morbid curiosity, trying to understand evil?
It's unsettling, and it really highlights why it's so crucial, as the source emphasizes, to shift the focus back.
Back to the victims. Absolutely. To remember their names, their lives that were cut short. That's the real tragedy here, not the notoriety of the killer.
That feels like the right takeaway. Engaging with these stories, however difficult, should ultimately be about honoring them, acknowledging the human cost. So, wrapping up this deep dive, drawing from this account, we've looked at Richard Ramirez, a story that starts with horror, seems fueled by delusion, and ends in just devastation.
And it leaves you with that fundamental unsettling question, doesn't it? You read this account and you have to wonder, are monsters like Ramirez born? Or are they created? Nature versus nurture in its most extreme form.
A question with no easy answers, that's for sure. Something to really think about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you'll continue to reflect on this case, its victims, and the questions it raises.